When was the last time you looked at a label on a package of canned corn or soybeans or bread for that matter? Did it state that what you were about to purchase was genetically modified, or that what you were about to eat was even safe for human consumption? If your answer is no, it's probably because you live in the United States, where food sellers and producers are not required to label foods that have been genetically modified. Not only that, but testing of GMO foods isn't required either. Now, when discussing GMOs, there's always one name that gets dropped: Monsanto. Monsanto is the principal player against the push to require labeling for GMO foods in the U.S. And despite countless international lawsuits against the agro giant, it seems that the playing field is always shaped in favor of the big corporations. So to try to highlight why you should care about the comfortable attitude this government has on GMO foods and just how much influence Monsanto really has over Washington, I'm going to revisit a few segments that highlight just that. Starting with an interview with Jeffrey Smith, author of the book Seeds of Deception, where we first asked him just how much legal resource is left to fight for the labeling of GMO foods. Check it out.
The governor of Vermont and the leaders in Connecticut as well both refused to let the bills for labeling go through because of their fear of an expensive lawsuit from Monsanto. And we've been tracking their influence all around the world. I visited 34 countries, and they basically capture regulatory agencies and capture government administrations. In fact, they captured the Food and Drug Administration. It was their former attorney, Michael Taylor, who was in charge of policy at the FDA when the GMO policy was created. And he said, no safety testing is needed, no labeling is needed. Companies like Monsanto, who told us that PCBs, Agent Orange, and DDT were safe, can determine on their own if GMOs are safe and put it on the market without telling the FDA or consumers. And then Michael Taylor became Monsanto's vice president, and now he's back at the FDA as U.S. food safety czar. And the justification for not regulating GMOs was based on a sentence in the policy that was entirely false, claiming that the agency wasn't aware of information showing that GMOs were different, when in fact their own scientists uniformly agreed that GMOs were dangerous and needed testing. This was the first level of deception, and they've been layering the deception since then, that it'll feed the world, lower the use of agricultural chemicals, and now in California, they're layering deception on Prop 37.
Deception. All right, so what are we learning so far? A, we're learning that Monsanto has a hell of a lot of influence. B, scientists from both sides of the aisle agree that some GMOs are dangerous and require testing. And we're learning that the whole campaign against labeling these foods is based entirely on falsehoods. Yet, a majority of Americans want their food to be labeled before they purchase it. And of course, the reason food doesn't get labeled is due to a revolving door between Washington and big agribusiness. See for yourself.
One only has to look at who Obama has appointed to the very regulatory bodies that are supposed to be responsible for our food safety. Roger Beachy, director at the USDA, is a former director of the Monsanto Danforth Center. Michael Taylor, the FDA's food safety czar, is the former vice president of Monsanto. Ramona Romero, a USDA counsel, was previously on DuPont's corporate council. And the Secretary of Agriculture, Thomas Vilsack, was awarded Governor of the Year by the Biotechnology Industry Organization, whose members include Monsanto. And lastly, Islam Siddiqui, the U.S. Agriculture Trade Representative who pushes GM exports in other countries, is a former Monsanto lobbyist.
Now, some of you might be thinking, well, I'll just go to the healthier grocery store where I know all my food is 100% organic. Well, you might want to think again. As Alexis Baden-Meyer explains, even the most healthy-sounding options like Whole Foods can still be pumped full of GMOs. Check it out.
Well, Whole Foods is actually certified as a grocery store under the USDA National Organic Program. And they've got the big USDA seal right when you walk in. So I think that most consumers would assume that there isn't anything genetically modified in Whole Foods. But it's not all organic. And so if you pick up, for instance, a Kashi cereal, they have a cereal that is almost all soy. And all soy is genetically modified in the United States. So if it's not organic, which it isn't, the Go Lean cereal, then you're eating a product that's almost entirely GMO.
Yeah.
And that's something that's sold in health food stores, it's sold in Whole Foods, and yet they hang the big USDA seal over the doorway and let the consumers walk in thinking everything's fine.
Look, guys, the bottom line is that we're all unknowingly consuming GMO foods. In many instances, even when we think we're not consuming them. So, next time you're at a grocery store, really think about the substances that are in your food. Wouldn't you rather know exactly what you're putting into your body? After all, you are what you eat.